I'm Dane Rose, and in this video I will explore some of the positive aspects of emotions. And the first thing that I want to say is that emotions are on a continuum, from dark emotions to light emotions. That's probably the way that makes sense, both in its kind of metaphor that, depression seems like a very dense emotion, whereas joy feels like a very light emotion. And we also, in our cultural paradigms, associate higher with better, the house on the hill instead of the house on the valley, the CEO instead of the entry-level employee. So in this framework, we are all culturally predisposed to want to be high, as long as we don't use drugs. So there's little, we want to be high in a very socially acceptable and condoned way. So knowing that emotions are on a continuum, what it means, first of all, is that wherever we are, there is a higher state and there is a lower state. Emotions are a state of being. The other context is that we as a consciousness are defined by an equal balance of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, our emotional body, our mental body, and our physical body. And the reason that we want, the basic reason that we're interested in this topic at all is, number one, that the higher emotions, joy, happiness, laughter, enthusiasm, feel better than the lower emotions, despair, emptiness, loneliness, number one. Number two, the higher emotions make other people feel better. Although it should be noted that many expressions of higher emotions make people in a lower state or with a more conventional expression of higher emotions feel uncomfortable and sometimes even panic. The exalted, joyful dancing down the street of a beautiful person is something that we are so uncomfortable with as a culture that we would immediately look for something wrong with them, some mechanism, legally or politically, socially, physically, to pull them down. And this actually leads into the first aspect of the positive aspect, the desirable aspect of negativity or negative emotions. So we're sitting having coffee in our brooding morning look. Let's say we're looking detached and uninterested. And this is another thing to kind of be aware of around emotions. We have three essential human states that traverse the ancient reptilian brain, which is the unemotional state. It's the sociopathic reflex. This is basically a survival brain. We have the human brain, which is the empathic brain, the brain that is coordinating us with other people empathically. You watch their body language, their eyes, they start to squint a little bit. You think, oh, it's scaring them, I'll back off. So this is the flexible, adaptive human brain. And then in the pineal gland, we have the transcendent brain. This is where the human dimethyltryptamine, DMT, is created, where if someone has a dream, for example, a dream, in one of the great ironies of our culture, a primary chemical within the body that is associated with near-death experiences, with spiritual awakening and transcendence, that is available, that people who have taken what is a Schedule I illegal drug, go figure, you've got it in your body, and 2, it is not addictive, and 3, most people don't want to take it again because it takes you out of frame. So we come in as this incredibly potentiated infant with the capacity to learn any language, any culture, to put on any clothing that is bestowed to us, and we have a given set of culture put onto us, and then all of our consciousness is viewed and views through that clothing, through that set of veils. And what the pineal gland does in transcendent experiences is it connects with the vastness of energy that we are outside of that programming, those veils, and unbound by convention. And so people that have a mystical, transcendent, visceral experience are activating and producing their pineal gland in a way that is biologically intended for the mediation. The pineal gland is the physical vehicle, the physical antenna and measuring and tuning device that allows consciousness within the human body to reach out beyond the human body, beyond the 5 senses. Because if you remember, there's this vast spectrum of dimensionality out there, and you poke a little hole in it, and you create a measuring device of a tongue, and now any part of that vastness that is within a certain frequency will create a certain kind of color on the tongue. And that's called taste. And that's how we get to know reality through the tongue. And then any part of reality that has a certain spectrum of vibration that corresponds with the spectrum measurable by this little thing called a nose, creates what we call a smell. And there's lots of, quote, smell that is above the spectral range of the nose and below, and then we don't smell anything at all. There's lots of taste that is above and below the range of taste, and we don't taste anything at all. There's lots of sound that is too high for the ear to hear or too low for the ear to hear. And so we don't know, we don't taste reality through our ears in those spectrums. And so, and the same with our eyes, that we see up to a certain spectrum of light and down to a certain spectrum of light. And so with and touch, we can touch certain things. Like I can feel a little bit of air. But there are literally trillions of particles and stuff moving around that I can't touch them. They're too small. And then there's other things that are so big in their wave formation. You know, if something takes 100 million light years to move through, and everything that I'm calibrated to sense and feel is vibrating at a rate of, let's say, 5 million vibrations a second, you know, at a nucleus atomic level. I may not touch that thing. There's other things that are so fast that just in the time that I would move from here to here, it's gone through faster than any sense could perceive at a smaller level. So there's all kinds of reality that I know nothing about. I don't see, hear, smell, taste that reality. I can't even imagine that reality. It has no temperature, etc., etc. And so we have this tiny little reality that is our vantage point out into the world. And within the stabilized ecology that we can see, hear, smell, and touch, amongst that ecology, we are here on this planet. And the pineal gland potentially has the capacity to mediate consciousness, to give us either a metaphorical sense, one, or to actually take the consciousness outside of the measuring devices and observing devices of our senses, to start seeing parts of reality that may be in the same time-space continuum, but are not observable through the five senses. And so this is, you know, this is our pineal gland. Now, the sociopathic state is triggered by life-threatening external situations or perceptions. Perceptions being the key word there. And takes us down into usually a state of numbness or fear, anxiety, and reactivity. That is, it's a fear that is unconscious and so reactive that it's more reactive than we're even conscious of. So you might say, are you scared? And they'd say no, but they're avoiding you, they're doing this. They're so busy reacting to their fear, they may not even be aware that they have it. And this is not an empathic state. This is a sociopathic state, meaning it's separate. The message of fear and danger is so innate and deep that there's no bandwidth within the consciousness allocated to care about other people's feelings unless they tie into our survival. Then we have the empathic state, which has the range of human emotions. And then we have the transcendent states, which, depending on how we respond to them, have the capacity of extreme dread, terror, loneliness and all that, or extreme joy and transcendence and freedom. And it partly determines, how safe we feel moving beyond the limited sense of self. So these are just some contexts within which negativity exists. And the first positive aspect of negativity is not so much negativity per se as much as stasis or certainty. So if you have a bunch of brooding, stressed out, anxious, texting executives in the cafeteria, they are all very comfortable in that state. Their muscles may be tense. They may be annoyed and impatient. Come on, get this text out, move, speed up internet, speed up. They're basically boxing with their technology. But if you try to interrupt that person and say, like, breathe deeply, enjoy, it's like, get out of here. I'm busy boxing with my technology. And so what we see here is that one of the fundamental things that humans need is a feeling of agency and control. And yet we are deeply affected by one another. And so one of the biggest reasons that why, for example, is there so much hostility towards naivete, innocence, smiling, laughter, dance? Like, there are so many unspoken rules, if you haven't noticed them, that basically say, if that person's smiling too much, that's not good, that's needy. If he's this, or that, all this stuff. If he's present to me, if he's looking at me too, stop looking at me, stop smiling, stop laughing, stop this, stop being weird, basically, and do what you're supposed to do in your role. And what we see here is that human certainty is really important to human beings, that they can depend on a given state to be there when they want it. And different states are conducive to different forms of expression. Like, this little state is actually conducive to getting 10 texts off during lunch hour, or 50 texts off. You may be able to relax and enjoy the sunset and do that, but typically the more joyful and expansive feelings, you don't want to do that. So, for example, I woke up with an undefined anxiety, number one. Number two, I wanted to understand it, not just get out of it. Because if I just got out of it without understanding, I was afraid that I would be afraid of going back into it without understanding. And then I would be in fear. And so there's a certain way that my fear of being in fear said, no, let me sit with this and really understand it. So here again, we have the positivity of negativity. Let me consciously dwell, turn my attention on this negativity rather than getting rid of it so that I'm not afraid of it. In other words, let me focus more on the negativity now to have less later. So there's kind of a learning, a message. This suggests a learning, a message in the arena of negativity. It also shows how being proactive in our engagement with negativity can create less negativity later. That there's a way that, if we have a thought, oh my gosh, I may not be able to pay the rent. And we look at that and we say, the rent is due in 20 days. I need $2,000, and in the first 10 days of this month, I've only made $500. That means in another 20 days, if things go as they are, I'm only going to be at 1,500. That means I could be thrown out of my home. That's a big deal. That would feel really bad. Therefore, I need to perturb my reality, to learn from this negativity, to value it, to understand what its message is, so that I can avoid this negativity in the future. So the first positive aspect we have of negativity is stasis. The scenario of a bunch of silent British business people, all silent, all texting, all reading their London Times, who are furious and absolutely don't want the clown to come in and laugh and engage and take their paper and say, come on, enjoy your life. It's like, get the fuck out of here. And this is basically saying that we want routine and stability and normalcy and a functional environment to get a certain thing done. And positive energy, up, fun, joy is the enemy of that, because it creates uncertainty, distracts the brain, makes noise, interrupts, and so it is not wanted. And so positivity is cleared out to maintain an admittedly much more uncomfortable conscious and physical state, hunched over a newspaper, etc. So this is the first, at least to the conscious mind of a businessman, positive aspect of negativity. Number two, we have the fact that embracing that a negativity in a low dose gives us clues that we can learn from, so that we don't have to experience negativity as a high dose, which means that negativity is a profoundly important survival and thriving process, because by giving us, it's like a homeopathic dose. Homeopathy puts a very small amount of the poison, percusses it in water, and then you take it, and your consciousness, the way homeopathy works when it works, is that your consciousness gets the message, oh, I've got to look out for this. And then it responds, and then you don't get sick from that same poison when you experience it in a large dose in the environment. And so this is the same thing, like that rent thought that perturbs you into making a change, so that by the end of the month you have significantly more money than you would have had you just ignored that thought. Had you had that rational thought come up and you say, I've got 500 now, the way it looks, I'm going to only have 1,500 at the end of the month. And I say, let's be positive. Let's not think about negative possibilities here. Let's just live each day as each day and see what happens. Well, it's like, yeah, and then you get to the end, and then it's like, now you're thrown out of your home. And it's like, well, let's just live each day as we see it happens. Well, the policeman is saying, move along now, move along now. So you can't, so in other words, when you ignore negativity, it gets louder and louder and louder. When you see and appreciate the gift, the negativity is a dissonance. It's saying something's off here. Hello, something's off. And when we turn our consciousness to that something that's off, we can then make adjustments. And so this is the gift of negativity. And then there is another aspect that's positive about negativity, and that is contrast. When we have a boring week doing work, and then we have an exciting weekend plan, we're really excited and we're present to the weekend plan. in many cases, if you look at someone's enjoyment of a weekend who has spent 50 hours a week working, and relate that to the enjoyment of a weekend of a retired person who has all the time in the world, it's often the contrast of the working person that is they enjoy their weekend 2 or 3 times more than the person who's kind of lost count of the days and just kind of drifts into a reality without contrast, where you kind of get up when you want to get up, you watch some TV, you kind of numb out there wherever it is, and around 4 p.m. you do some drinking, and then you go to bed, and it's just a haze. There's no distinction and contrast to wake you up, to appreciate the good stuff. So this is, and in art, it is the darker colors that show contrast and luminosity to the lighter colors. So this is the, another aspect of the positive side of negativity. Now, another positive side of negativity is the incredible role that fear and pain have provided in human evolution. So basically, fear and pain are the great reality tests. So you have your theory that praying to God and sitting in a lotus position is going to align you with the universe and all things. And someone says, that's not the way it is. I don't think so. And you say, oh, it is. It is. I have a vision. It is. And nah. And you debate. And you're sitting there in your lotus situation, and some hooligans come along and throw mud balls at you and push you over and beat you up. And you try and sit there, and they hit you again. You try and sit there, and they hit you again. And eventually you get up and you run away or you attack, because what happens is the traumatic center of the brain activates the fight, flight, freeze mechanism to keep your body alive. And this is necessary precisely because heady dogmatists of all kinds will willingly go to their grave to defend whatever dogma they've gotten enamored with, in part because we like to know things in certain and absolute terms. And negativity is a lot more certain and absolute, by the way, in many ways than not. I mean, if you're a child and you want to maintain a certain state and you're abused, see, if you're in a joyful state and then your father whacks you down into terror and grief, then you go up to a joyful state and then your father whacks you down into terror and grief, you've got very high volatility. It's very hard to feel stable. And thus, it's very hard to feel safe for the next whack. However, if you go into a brooding hate, you will be able to maintain the brooding hate state while you're being whacked again, and then you can maintain it after you've been whacked, anticipating the next unfairness and injustices in life, which are sure to come, and sure enough, they do. And you feel in control, you feel stable, like it's a fundamental human need to be able to establish, defend, and maintain a particular state. And when someone can just whack you out of that state, however it is, one of the things we will tend to do is downgrade our goal. Like if our goal is $1 million, and we get up to $100,000 and someone whacks us, and we get up to $100,000 and someone takes it all, and we get up to $100,000 and the IRS audits and says, no, that's and we get up to $100,000 and we get fired, and we basically can't get there. We may say, okay, something odd's going on at this $100,000 level. I don't want $1 million. What I want is $70,000. And we get up there, nothing happens. And we just stay there. It's like, I don't want to go up and see whatever that, there's something, you get up to this certain height and you just get whacked. I don't want that. So I want the stability of staying somewhere where I'm not going to get whacked down. And that for some could be a murderous, angry resentment, the abused teenager that's fighting for existence and you try and cheer that teenager up. It's like, fuck off. They attack the cheerfulness. What they're actually doing is they're attacking the volatility. I do not want to experience the helplessness that you can cheer me up and you can take me down and I can't maintain my own state. So I would rather be a fuck you angry teenager because I know how to maintain that state. It's a dense, easily to understand and maintain state. And it's where some people are going to whack me. Some gang is going to knock me down. I'm already there. I'm ready for them. And so this is the positive aspect of negative emotion, is it's providing stability when the human psyche does not have the tools, safety, and resources to navigate and handle volatility or to navigate and handle a higher state. And through pain and fear, which are primary teachers, you feel really scared of something, you start focusing on it. Your consciousness goes into that area and you start seeing what you can do with it. And if you are terrified, if you're sitting and doing the normal thing everyone's told you to do, and you get whacked and your pain and your fear go up, and then people tell you to go back and do the same thing and you get whacked and your pain and fear goes up, you're not going to go. You're going to say, why don't you sit in there and I'll watch you and I'll see what happens. Or you're going to learn the mechanism of your pain and fear and you're going to avoid it, which means you're more conscious. You've just grown more. So these are a couple of many positive aspects of negativity of various forms. Of course, we have it in all kinds of polarities, including like a battery, where you don't get electricity without a positive and negative pole. You have that tension of flow created by the two of them, created by the mix of fear, pain, shame, rage, and joy, hope, aspiration. And some of the most powerful people are motivated simultaneously by a strong positive and a strong negative pole. They never want to feel that poor again. And they have great aspirations and creative dreams to what it's like to be rich. They never want to be that helpless again. And they have a dream of the kind of mastery they want to experience.